name is Lindy Cowling. Welcome to my channel. My website is www.lindycowling.co.uk. My email is info@lindycowling.co.uk. And the title of the short video today is Malformations on a twin flame frequency, or malformations, malformed twin flame frequencies. So for sake of simplicity, let's describe this frequency as a line. Now the frequency isn't a line, but I'm just describing it this way for simplicity. So you have a line, you have a spectrum. And on that spectrum there are different polarities of expressions of consciousness, and those expressions of consciousness include one's personality. They definitely include one's energy, vibration, energy field, and if we think of it as a line, just for simplicity, think of it as a line. One end of that line, in terms of energy, is a more negative charge of energy, and the other far end of that line is a very pure expression of energy, a very light expression of energy, a very spiritual, fast expression of energy. All on the same line, different expressions along the same wave band or the same line. And again, I'm only calling it line because it's an easy way of explaining it, and it's an easy way to visualize it, and it's an easy way for me to visualize it. So people that connect, have a one soul connection, twin flame union, twin flames, you know, all of these kind of connections are somewhere on that line, that wave band, that frequency, that vibration, and you can have them come down in form of energy through soul, meet at point 0 point, center of the line, what has been termed, you know, that stage of euphoria, the bubble stage, what we used to call room 2 phase. Point 0, consciousness, that infinite consciousness, so they can activate at that point. But then one expression of the connection can be drawn to express in a polarized state and a more negative charge of energy. One can be on the more positive side of the energy. Or again, I'll use another example, they can metamorphosize, they can ignite in that frequency on that wave band at a different point to what I just said there. Let's, for sake of argument, call the bubble phase room 2 phase. Let's call the purity of the ignition with metaphysical symptoms and all of that side of it, let's call it 0 point, the point of creation, the point of infinity, the point of purity. Genuine twin flames have that 0 point activation, if you like. an unmistakable activation with metaphysical symptoms, with all the things that have been described on this channel before. There is an activation. So this is the first time I've called it 0 point or the unified field or that point like that, but that's what I'm describing here. It's the same thing. So again, if we go back, so genuine twin flames activating that, and then you can have them drop frequency within their own systems, energy fields, and be working through their stuff, if you like, or processing, going through the process. Or you can have polarized expressions of that energy. So say again, let's talk about it in being in a line, a wavelength, a wave band, a frequency, activating in the middle of that band, right in the middle of it there. And then as the frequency alters, as the physical body in a way and the energy field sort of like catches up from the activation, really, as that changes, depending on the personalities, the life experiences, the circumstances, outside interference, a multitude of other reasons. What started as, in a way, as the purity of the soul, that in a way is that spiritual perfection in a way, can then deviate off to a more negative expression of that charge or a more positive expression of that charge, and can go either way. You know, one can go left, one can go right. But there are also variations on that frequency, that wave band, that theme, that are not expressions of same soul. So same soul, twin flame union, expressions of the soul in more than one vehicle, more than one human vessel. There can be, along the same line, the same wave band, the same frequency, malformed, distorted, slightly off whack, slightly off center connections that, let's call it, we could say infiltrate that wave band, we could say mimic that wave band, we could say, you know, the terms that are used for these, it would be like false connections, false, you know, I don't like to, it feels negative to me to use that term, and I don't want to call it that, but some people would refer to it this way. So what are these, and what are these connections, and why do they so closely have many of the characteristics of a positive expression of that frequency? Let's start with the positive aspect of this here. Whatever connection you have, it is a tool for growth, for learning, for expansion. And there are some people that have dreadful experiences, and I was one of them, in that frequency as a tool of learning and expansion. But the flip side of that is, because I chose to expand into that polarity and keep going forward, I kept going into my heart. The frequency expanded, and as a result of my own personal experiences, I've not only been able to step forward spiritually within myself, but I've been able to help an awful lot of people as a result of seeing and witnessing and working with the complete variations of that line, that frequency, seeing and experience the polarized state, including disruptor energies, seeing and experiencing the purified state, point zero, and also stepping forward to the other end of the spectrum, continuing to move forward in the process. So these, let's call them again, malformed, distorted, you could say mimic, you could say, other people call them shadow connections or shadow twin flames. I'm talking about the same thing here, and this is my way of explaining it. The easiest way to describe it is you see a shiny, huge, great big shiny red apple, and it looks on the outside to be purity. It gives you one message on the outside, that it's a shiny, juicy, lovely, sumptuous, tasty apple. But when you bite into it, it isn't a sumptuous, tasty apple. It's rotten. So let me give you another example. Fantastic, beautiful, red, shiny sports car. Looks amazing. You lift the hood up to look at the engine, and there's no engine inside. Let me give you another example. Lovely smells wafting from the kitchen, from the oven. You look through the oven door, massive great sponge cake cooking in there, smells wonderful. But when you open the oven door, it looks very different to how it looked from the outside, and in fact it's not what it seemed. It's as flat as a pancake, basically. All capable of seeming to be one thing on the outside, but spiritually very different to what they seemed, or very different underneath the original mask, or a distortion on that wave band, on that frequency. And again, I'm going to say, if you are someone that was, let's say, activated in that way, prodded in that way, woken up in that way, distressed in that way, traumatized in that way, whatever way it played out for you, or all of those things, if you choose, hand on heart, to move forward, you can move forward from it. And I'm not saying it can be done overnight, and I'm not saying it's easy, but you can transform such an experience and come out of it, let's say, more complete, more whole, more unified than some of the stages of that experience. Because if you've been involved with a malformed, it's the easy way I can put it. It's like, look, another way of putting it is like this. If a mother's pregnant with twins, and then she has an ultrasound, and it's sad news because one of the twins seems to be perfectly formed, and the other twin has not formed correctly at all. And it's very clear that they're not going to come to fruition, or she's going to lose that twin, or the twin is going to be profoundly, have a lot of challenges if the twin makes it to be born at all. That's another example I'm using here. I'm just trying to express in simple ways of an expression of energy that is two different polarizations of the energy that can intentionally, a bit like a predator, weave itself around a frequency, like a poison ivy, like that plant that can choke the life out of a flower. These again exist. This is an experiential channel. Which means I work with people involved in these energies, and I've experienced these energies firsthand. I only ever talk about anything that I've experienced firsthand, and I'm confident in speaking about because of that. So these malformations on this frequency, again, can be learnt from. You can look very deeply into the emotions that's coming up, and I'm not saying that they don't cause harm and they don't cause a degree of damage, because sometimes they do. But again, these things can be transformed. What comes up for you can be transformed, and you know, people are going to sometimes require assistance with that from various different people while they move through that process. But I'm going to clarify here what I'm talking about again. When somebody activates with a connection in a way that is hiding within that frequency, or is entangled around that frequency, or has infiltrated that frequency, or is a polarized state of that frequency, this doesn't take away your genuine love for the person you've connected with. Because let me make this point, and I've made it in other ways in other videos on this channel. When you've interacted with somebody in your spiritual field, when you've interacted with somebody in your soul energy, you know about it, and it is transforming. It is excruciating when you go through that process, especially if the personality characteristics of the person you were or are involved with are sociopathic, narcissists, psychopaths, which go hand in glove with what I'm talking about, with very, very few exceptions. And if on top of that they are being infiltrated and influenced by disruptor energies, which again a high proportion are being influenced by disruptor energies, and if in their bloodlines there are distortions in their misuse of energy, implants, curses on the bloodline, outside interference, all of these kind of things again, which disrupt entity involvement, which disruptors, you know, thrive on. They thrive on suffering and misery because it's food to them. If you have any of them in the equation on top of everything I've just said, then you've got a real, you know, you've got a real transformation of the most challenging kind, really. Because it's, I always say the bravest of the brave choose that route. It's like being born onto a battleground, you know, like a battleground in World War I, just being born in the middle of that. To come through an activation on the more, or with the more challenging end of that polarization is extraordinary. And it's very challenging. But it gives you the opportunity to transform. Now you could say to me, why does such a thing happen? Why do fleas get on dogs and cats? You know, why do people catch viruses and the flu? In very many ways, it's a viral state of energy here. It contaminates, and again, I'm going to say to you, it can be very challenging, but you can transform as a result of that. Now, a classic telltale giveaway sign that your connection is not what maybe it seems on the surface to be to you is that, without exception, the malformed expressions of this frequency, just like a parasite, just like a predator, just like a virus, have to use the energy of their connection. They cannot stand on their own 2 feet without it, and if they can't wring the life out of and siphon the life out of their connection, the light, the love, the energy, they will try and get it wherever else they can. One level of it will be narcissistic supply. That's just on the personality side of it. I'm going a much deeper than this. Narcissistic supply in terms of personality will give them a certain amount of hits, but it's never going to be the really big hit, the really big injection that they would get with a real primary connection on that frequency. So a dead giveaway is they just can't, they have to wring the life out of that connection, so the person with them becomes more and more drained, more and more messed up, more and more, you know, like a blob of jelly by the end of it, because they have siphoned continuously that energy to prop themselves up. They cannot make the connection to who they truly are because they can't do it. So they use that energetic connection with the other person to do it, to prop up this false facade in a way. Now I'm going to backtrack so that I'm making this really clear again. Let me go back again. I'm going to explain it in terms of a line, a frequency, a waveband, a wavelength, a sound, a vibration. Souls, spirit, that connect at a sacred level, a pure level, a divine level, at the heart of everything that bypasses everything else, just that purity, infinity, consciousness, pure consciousness. Bosh, straight in, let's say at the centre of that line, as infinite consciousness, as purity, metaphysical symptoms, magical symptoms, pure love, genuine love. Some people call that the ignition, the bubble phase. I call it Room 2 phase, whatever. We're all talking about the same thing, we're all referencing the same thing. Right in the centre of it, point 0, these are the genuine ones. There are malformations, predators, parasites, energy that can mask itself within that line, that can seem as if it's connected at that energy of purity, at that point 0, at that bubble, but when you actually talk to people around it, it's not really, it's off kilter, and it's not really, they haven't experienced many of those things. The malformations of them often, not always, but most often, incredibly often, are through the personalities of narcissistic personality disorder, sociopaths, psychopaths, psychopathic personalities. Very, very often through there. A dead giveaway if it's a malformed one, an infiltration of this frequency, is they have to use the part of their connection to get their energy. They suck them dry. They suck them dry emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, psychically, in all forms of energy. And their connection, instead of becoming greater than, starts off greater than with euphoria, and in a way with the charm and everything else that is imparted to them with a connection, especially a narcissistic connection or a player that knows how to play this, but soon becomes extremely distressed, depleted, and it becomes obvious after a while, even though they say love is blind, it becomes obvious after a while that the other party can only connect into their divinity through the other one. They cannot do it standing on their own 2 feet. And they try, they try and use other people, especially in energy settings, they love that, to prop themselves up, or they'll try in other ways to prop themselves up. They'll try every trick in the book, but they will never be able to do it the way they could with their, let's call it their primary connection, and they know it. I'm going to say again, because people get very confused about this, and then because they're dancing with a malformation of a negative polarization of this energy, because they've been gaslighted narcissistically, confused, mentally hammered into the ground, and emotionally, they keep on the end. And let's not forget, head over heels in love, you know, in every sense of the word, chemically, spiritually, emotionally, psychically, soully, spiritually, you know, the whole works. They then stay on the end of that people stay on the end of that for years, being pummeled into the ground, sucked dry, because they just don't know which way's up and they can't see what's happening. But let's not take away the love being the real thing, that the love they feel for whatever name we give that, malformation, deformation, false flame, mimic twain, we won't call it mimic twain, mimic flame, whatever name we give to it, it does not take away the love being real. It does not take away the incredible strength of that connection. And it's powerful stuff. And I know it's powerful stuff because I've experienced this frequency. I've lived the twin flame frequency. And I work with people, all variations of it. Some aren't connected to that frequency at all and think they are. Some are, you know, all different variations, all different experiences. I've worked with many people that have experienced the most challenging end of these connections. And they all come out of it upside down. Even years later, they're still, well, you can go one way or the other on this. You can either let a connection like that take you down to your knees and you stay down there. Or you decide, you know, to get up, to dust yourself off, and you decide to get moving and get going forward, because it's an opportunity to transform. And at the end of the day, I wouldn't say, what I would say is I would approach the whole thing about the malformation of this frequency with compassion, but I would caution against trying to save a connection that is that distortion, because you can't save what doesn't want to be saved. There is no way you can set out to save a distortion, because they have to do the inner work themselves. They have to want it. They have to want to go into the heart. They have to want love. A connection like that, a malformation of that connection, in some ways is repelled by the energy of love, is repelled by divinity. That sort of connection wants the power. That sort of connection wants the power, but it does not want the love. Can't cope with that level of truth and that level of love. Wants the power, wants the notoriety of it, wants the glory of it, wants the showmanship of it. But underneath all that, they don't want the real heart of it. And like I say, I'm going to remind you, a huge proportion of the cases, shall we say, that are running those sort of energies are narcissists, psychopaths, sociopaths. So they are, in personality, wired that way anyway. If you were to say to me, can a miracle happen? Can a malformation, can a mimic of a twin flame union, can a false twin flame, can a shadow twin, whatever you want to call it, if you were to say to me, can a miracle occur, and then somebody on that spectrum turn around and step into their divinity? What I can say to you is I haven't seen that personally happen in anyone I've worked with. Does it mean it can't happen? My gut feeling, and this is only my gut feeling, is when a decision in any of us is made on the level of spirit and soul, when a decision has been made on that level of I will turn left instead of turning right, and that is the timeline I'm going to continue in. I am going to deliberately, not in personality, this is bigger than this, deliberately in soul and spirit decide to not be the true me, because the true me is going to involve giving up power, which is an illusion, because of course it's not involved in giving up power, it's the perception of power. You can never be more powerful than when you stand in your own divinity. But might have to have a perceived change of status, may have to be changes on the personal front, may have to face themselves, which is almost like a horror story to someone with those characteristics. In fact, they're wired to find it nigh on impossible, if not impossible, to face self, because they just can't even go there. All of these things combined, and the decision on the soul and spirit there, of when that decision is made, is this is the way I'm going. I've never seen any indications of that being reversed in anyone. So what I would say to you is, if you are head over heels in love with, entangled with, had experienced in the past, still not over it, haunted by it, if you are in a situation where you're involved with someone that's a very extraordinary connection, there are some metaphysical things, there are others, there are very many dark aspects to it. They are definitely the personality characteristics and the profile that I've described. Your life is hell on wheels more than it is lovely. There is great pleasure derived by your suffering. You are deliberately held in a holding pattern of suffering, whether that's a triangle situation, whether that's another situation. And I'm going to use those words again. You are deliberately held. So before you turn around and say, well, surely you have free will to walk away, when you're that pummeled down for that length of time, and you're on your knees emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually and psychically, it is very difficult for a lot of people to walk away at that stage, because they are so entrenched after that period of time, such a long time, and so in love, and because they have honoured their truth, they have made life changes, they have gone into the truth, there have been huge consequences, so they're dealing with all that as well. It is very difficult at that stage, and so many of them, feel that they don't have any free will of their own, and that they're just like a rag doll in a washing machine, being pulled around backwards and forwards. And if you are one of these people and you're listening to this and this is really ringing true, I can tell you now, and I can tell you straight, whether your connection is a catalyst, a dark catalyst, whether it's a twin flame, genuine twin flame, whether it's not a twin flame, whether it's a mimic, a false twin flame, whatever it is, if you're on your knees and you're going through hell and you are being mistreated emotionally, physically, mentally, you feel completely confused about this, that there are very many dark aspects to it, that there is pretty much strong evidence that this person is almost like you giving up your spiritual fire to them, like a bleeding for them 24/7. If this is true for you, and yes, it is true that genuine twin flame union, I know this, they go through multiple challenges and things like that, but I'm talking about the dark here, the dark polarization, the negativity by far outweighs the positive. in every sense of the word, and you know it, your gut is telling you, your gut has been telling you for a long time you've got these warning flags up, then I hope this video helps. And what I would say to you is standing back and getting yourself to a space of healing and recovery and clarification is everything. And whether it's genuine twin flame or not, if it's a twin flame that's a narcissist or a psychopath, you're on a hiding to nothing with that. What I would say in all those cases is stand back and allow yourself time to balance, to get clarification, to heal, to recover. And if it's a genuine connection, well, they'll understand and respect that anyway. It is not running, it's not bolting, it's giving yourself that time till you have the clarity for yourself in your gut feeling, in your knowing. And then you can make balanced decisions accordingly. See, part of why these carry on as long as they do is because people are confused, and because they are so addictive and so powerful and so strong, so euphoric, amazing, you know, in every single respect, and can be just as amazing at one moment as they can be just as hellish. This roller coaster again of emotions. This is what keeps people engaged as long as they are. So what I would say again, if you're not sure, if you're confused, if you don't want to speak to anyone around about it like myself, for example, then take some time out. Take some time out. You're not going to be able to take that time out for 2 days or a week and get clarity. You might have to take a good few weeks or a good few months out till you're able to come into a space where you can get clarification and just balance out again. Because these malformations are there, they exist, just like viruses exist, you know, just like fleas exist on dogs and cats. They are there, and they are part and parcel of interferences around that frequency, and have been for quite some time. If you genuinely love yourself, you have to give yourself a chance for your own gut feeling, your own intuition, your own knowing to kick in. You have to give yourself time for that discernment and clarity. You have to give yourself time to step back from it. And I know for some people it's hard. It's like being a drug addict. You know, it's scary to step back. But it may be the best thing you've ever done. And if you are panic-stricken about stepping back, you need to also look at that. What are you panic-stricken about stepping back for? And there'll be a lot of stuff in there. And again, you'll have a realisation that half of that isn't even your stuff. Why are you so hooked in that you can't even step back slightly to try and see it? I always have a saying, you can't see a reflection clearly if your nose is on the mirror. If your nose is on a mirror like that, you can't see the reflection. If you stand right back from the reflection, you can see clearly in the mirror. And if it's not Alice in Wonderland and it's Maleficent, well, you're going to know when you step back from the mirror. On that note, this is, my gosh, this is one of the longest, if not the longest video I've done. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I do hope that has helped. Thank you for subscribing. And I will love you and leave you.